in two parts of the lecture on older adult nutrition for nutrition and lifespan, taught in fall 2020. So this lecture will cover interesting conditions that affect nutrition status. And I expect most of these are going to be new for you and that you haven't really covered them in any kind of detail, especially with respect to older adults. So it's pretty interesting to think about. And we started out the lecture last time, or the time before, talking about, how do you want to age? How do you want this to be for yourself? And I imagine that how you feel about aging is the same way that older people feel about aging. They don't want to lose their capabilities either. They want to continue to enjoy life. And some of these nutritional or health issues can affect their nutrition status. So it's a critical piece for you guys to be able to understand this. So we're going to talk about something I expect you may not know anything about, atrophic gastritis, and I don't know about the rest of this. So this will be interesting. All right, so the first topic is atrophic gastritis. Here's your title slide. I put it down here to make it more interesting. What is atrophic gastritis? You may not have never heard this before. Gastritis, gast refers to the stomach, itis refers to inflammation, and atrophic refers to atrophy, which means breakdown. And I have this on the next couple of slides too. So what happens, sadly, when we get older is instead of having vibrant organs that have all their full component of cells that do all the things that we had when we were young, things kind of start to slowly slow down. And it's going to be at a different rate for different people. Some people never have experiences like this. Their stomach's hearty until they die at 95. Other people start having difficulties with their stomach when they're younger. So some people experience inflammation of the stomach, and it can lead to loss of granular cells, and it's usually when they get older. So there's several slides about this, so kind of stay with me as I go through this. How can atrophic gastritis affect health? Now, I know you've all had nutrition and physiology, and this is going to be a diagram similar to the kind of diagram you had in that class. I taught that class for several semesters, so I'm pretty much know what you learn about. We also talk about this in biochemical nutrition. But this is a diagram of a gland which is inside the stomach. Okay, so these cells are cuboidal cells. They're going to be producing things, and then they get squirted out, basically, or secreted is better, into the surface of this inside of the stomach. So the inside of your stomach has a coating on it based on these glandular cells. And a lot of what they produce is really important. These cells produce things like hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor. You may or may not, I know you probably remember HCl, and I don't remember how much we cover intrinsic factor. So let me remind you, in order to absorb vitamin B12, we need both hydrochloric acid and this compound called intrinsic factor that's needed to transport B12 into a small intestinal cell. Several of these slides repeat this. I just kind of want to get started on this. If we're not producing enough hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor, or any, because these are needed for B12 absorption, this can interfere with vitamin B12 absorption. So as people get older, they are at increased risk for having poor vitamin B12 status. I'll keep talking about this. Why do we need B12, HCl, and intrinsic factor? So as a reminder, B12 is a vitamin that works with folic acid. You remember those methyl donor reactions we've talked, remember, like CH3 is a methyl group, and these chemical reactions are critical. And vitamin B12 and folic acid work together to make hemoglobin, which we need for our red blood cells. And vitamin B12 in particular is needed to maintain the myelin sheath in nerve cells. So we'll talk about deficiency in a minute, but in order for your nerve cells to work and continue working, there needs to be an intact myelin sheath, and we need B12 to keep it that way. So just kind of keep this in your head. If B12 status goes down, what's that going to do? So why do we need hydrochloric acid? This is a stomach acid that, and you remember this, I know you've had it a few times, but it denatures proteins, activates pepsinogen, which is a zymogen enzyme that begins the digestion of protein, and interferes with microbial growth. So we have in the stomach hydrochloric acid that has multiple functions. A primary function here with respect to this discussion is that it separates vitamin B12 from food. Okay, from protein in ingested food. So here's an example, and I have a couple more slides on this too. But let's say you're eating a hamburger. Well, there's vitamin B12 in meat products, right? It's not found in products of vegetable origin. It's found in products of animal origin. So there's vitamin B12 in the hamburger. So you take the bite of the hamburger, chew it up, and then starts all that digestive process. The B12 in that hamburger is attached, you can even see this, is attached to protein. So they're linked together. It's not just separate. So in order to actually get this B12 and absorb it, you need hydrochloric acid. So if your stomach has enough hydrochloric acid, that's an important step in separating vitamin B12 from the protein so you can actually absorb it. Okay, so low levels, and there's a couple terms you'll hear if you end up taking medical nutrition therapy. There's a couple of terms. There could be low levels of hydrochloric acids, which is hypochlorhydria, or even absence of hydrochloric acid, which is achlorhydria. And in this case, this can interfere with how much B12 is absorbed. So what's intrinsic factor? This is a glycoprotein that we normally produce in the stomach that is needed it binds to B12 and is needed to shuttle B12 into the cell for absorption. Okay, we actually produce it in the stomach, but it doesn't work with B12 until it's in the small intestine. So what's going on here is these are items, hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor, are items produced normally in the stomach that have lots of functions, but the two of them together, the primary function is absorption of vitamin and absorption of vitamin B12. So keep this in your head. So why does the stomach atrophy? What causes atrophic gastritis? There are two categories here: not controllable and controllable. Not controllable is some people have a genetic disorder. It's called autoimmune atrophic gastritis. And what happens is your own antibodies attack those cells that produce hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor. And so you break down your own glands. That means you're not going to be producing everything that you need. So atrophy can occur here, okay, by a genetic condition. Another one, not controllable. Sometimes people have infections with a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. And I know we talk about this in our previous classes, but you may not remember. So some people get infestations with this bacteria, and it actually can live in the stomach, even though the stomach has normally been acidic. And what it does is it breaks down the cells. So instead of having the nice lining of a stomach that you normally have, it causes some breakdown of those cells. So people can have Helicobacter pylori and not know it, or they can start to feel like they have a stomach ulcer and go get tested, and then they find Helicobacter pylori, and then they give them antibiotics and it goes away. So in the last way that we can't control about getting atrophic gastritis is just getting older. Our cells stop multiplying as fast, stop replacing each other as fast. And we feel aging all across the body in a variety of ways, and this is one way. So Our stomach can atrophy in these 3 ways, and we certainly can't control this or this or this, but we can get medical care and cure the infection with Helicobacter pylori. So what's controllable is not consuming too many non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. I know we talk about these in a lot of our classes. This is a category of drugs that is not a corticosteroid. So these are the aspirin, Advil, ibuprofen, those drugs, Motrin, people take for menstrual cramps sometimes. Those all act in a certain way that it can remove the protection of the lining of the stomach. Some people can take aspirin without having it. It's a genetic component too, but people that consume too much aspirin or too much Advil can feel discomfort in their stomach because they're actually eroding some of the surface of their stomach. The last one is excess alcohol intake. Some people are very sensitive to this. Some people feel this when they're older. Are there any questions about this? Because this is a lot of information. Anything, did y'all know what NSAIDs were already?
Yes.
All right, so you're good. I'm assuming you're good. You'll tell me, you'll write Kristen a little chat and then we'll talk. So Kristen, you yell at me or something if I need to stop. So does this make sense, everybody? Somebody say yes.
It makes sense, but I just had a question about,
Okay.
You didn't have any hydrochloric acid in your stomach, or if you didn't have any HCl, with that also, that would affect a lot more than just B12, right? I mean, it would affect your protein intake and.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I have to tell you what it's like to prepare for classes like this, because I go both ways. Sometimes I say, well, let me tell you everything I can tell you about what happens if you have atrophic gastritis or if you have decreased hydrochloric acid. And I do that. And actually I went through and kind of streamlined these lectures. Since we're doing this online, I usually run over the board and write things down and, have more of an interactive discussion. But you're absolutely right. Not having stomach acid is going to affect, we're pretty good at absorbing protein anyway, but it can cause it causes discomfort. It can affect iron absorption because it changes iron to the more absorbable form. It can affect calcium absorption. So absolutely, this is not, the decrease in hydrochloric acid is not a good thing. And thank you for asking that. What I'm doing here is trying to focus on this issue with B12, but your question is perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, let's keep going. So I want to talk a little bit more about H. pylori, because this is something, if you're working with older adults, and remember when we talked before, there's a whole lot more older adults coming down the pike. So some of you may end up working with older adults as a healthcare provider. So H. pylori is not that uncommon. And it was very interesting because people used to think, and this is like 40 years ago, they used to think that no bacteria could grow in the stomach. And it was a big, ego thing for a lot of people that were very comfortable with that. And then a really cool researcher named Peter Marshall figured it out. He figured out that a bacteria actually can grow in the stomach. And the way he figured it out is he drank a concoction containing H. pylori and got gastric upset and was able to demonstrate this to scientists. So this is kind of a fun story. But so this, how do you get this? You get it from other people. Let me give an example. So if somebody in the house has H. pylori, now it's in their stomach. So you probably aren't going to get H. pylori for somebody you're not living with. But, and you think, well, hopefully I live with you, but I don't get anything, I don't have anything to do with the contents of your stomach. but you can increase transmission. You can, if you chew foods or, share food or something like that, there's a low chance, but it can still happen. So anyway, it's associated with stomach pain. And I don't have this, but I've had gastritis. So I can tell you that it's not a fun thing. Gastritis, what it feels, not an ulcer, but what it feels like is someone's like trying to put a cigarette out in your stomach. It's very, very painful. And once you start, I have talked about atrophic gastritis a long time before I ever started having any symptoms. So it's very interesting. But But so you can feel pain from this. And so if you have a stomach pain, they'll do a couple things. They'll do a upper endoscopy to see if there's any holes in your stomach. And then they'll also do it to take a sample and see if there's any H. pylori. And if there's H. pylori, then you could take an antibiotic and things are good. So it's almost a good thing to have. But people may feel, discomfort, not eating, weight loss, or nothing. So this is why we need a system of healthcare so people can get screening for things like this, because you don't want to go for a long period of time with H. pylori. I don't have this in the slides, but people that have H. pylori infections for a long period of time, there is an increased risk for cancer from this. Oh my goodness, I have this great picture here. So you treat with antibiotics. See, what I like is that H. pylori is in there like watching TV and stuff. Okay, so it's completely happy in there. All right, so why do we talk about this with older adults? Well, remember, atrophy of the stomach and inflammation. So as you get older, the incidence of having atrophic gastritis goes up. So here's my age group. I'm already here, so I'm part of the people that fill this out. Okay, and it just gets worse. And again, cell function just declines. It's just the way you'll know this. It's what happens. Now, this is a diagram, and don't be calm in case you don't like diagrams. I'm a lover of diagrams. So, but what I have is I'm explaining B12 absorption to help you get it in your head. This next slide tells you step by step what I'm going to talk about. And so we're going to talk about B12 absorption looking at this diagram, but bear in mind that the details are written down here too. Okay, so this is kind of to help you get started with this. So you're eating vitamin B12, and as I indicated, in natural sources, this is important, in a natural source, not a supplement, but in the example was the hamburger, but it doesn't have to be such a beef product. Okay, it can be an egg, right? But it's bound to food protein. So that's what this shows you. B12 is bound to food protein. Now this is the stomach, and it's showing you the secretions in the stomach. So you eat this, then this B12 plus the food protein gets into the stomach. Now, if things are working properly, you've got your pepsin, you've got your hydrochloric acid, and you're fine at being able to break up B12 from its food protein. So in particular, hydrochloric acid. So this is showing you, instead of this intact protein, it's showing you all the pieces. It was broken down, and B12 has now been liberated from the protein that was bound to in your food. So basically, you just converted it into a simple vitamin B12 molecule. So also, you made this in the mouth, but in the stomach, this compound, and I usually don't ask about heptacorn, but just so you know, there's a compound we make in the salivary glands that then binds to B12 while in the stomach. There's just lots of carriers, okay? And then here we go. We still have digestion going on in the stomach. And so we then break it apart in the small intestine. So it goes down, and so there you go. Now, so imagine this is B12. It's in the early part of the small intestine, the duodenum. So it's by itself again. From the stomach, in a healthy situation, we had already also produced intrinsic factor. And it didn't bind yet, but it's in that big, remember the term chyme and chyle that has to do with a mishmash of things in the stomach as it gets absorbed and handled. So we have a healthy stomach, we produced this intrinsic factor. So here's your isolated B12, here's intrinsic factor, and together this ushers B12 into a small intestinal cell. This, remember, absorption is when a compound gets into the cell. So what's going on here? We're talking about what's in your mouth, what's in your stomach. It's in the actual digestive tube. And so it stays in there. B12 is in the gastrointestinal tract until it gets absorbed in the small intestine. So the reason I talk about this, I think it really helps so much to have a visual about this. So if you know hydrochloric acid, let's think with this. So you need hydrochloric acid. What if you don't have any hydrochloric acid? What happens to B12?
It won't be separated from the food protein.
Yeah, perfect. So it's still stuck on the food protein. So it's no longer this isolated B12, it's got its own protein. So the rest of this won't work. B12 is not available here or here. It's bound to protein. So absorption goes down. So if you get older, your acid production goes down. You're not going to be that good at digesting and to the point where you can absorb vitamin B12 from foods. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's a problem here, and there's an easy solution. Let's say you have enough money to buy whatever you want and you understand healthcare issues and you know you're over 50, so you may not have enough hydrochloric acid anymore. What can you do? Just give up? Is there any other way you can get B12 besides eating whole foods?
Supplement.
Supplements.
Yeah, yeah. So we spend so much of our time in your nutrition education saying supplements don't work. You don't necessarily need supplements. Let's don't overdo it. But every now and then, there's a nutrient where a supplement is a good idea. Remember in a pregnancy where we talked about folic acid that could be really important? Okay, for older adults, because this can be a kind of a problem, can affect a lot of people, a B12 supplement bypasses the need for hydrochloric acid. So if you just take a supplement and then here you are, you've got this nice little B12 here ready to go. This is why I like to talk about these diagrams, because it helps you visualize what's going on. Now, what if your stomach doesn't make intrinsic factor? So let's say acid's good, or you took a supplement and here's your supplement. It came from a B12 supplement and you don't have intrinsic factor. What's going to happen?
Can you repeat that, the question?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad somebody asked. Okay, so we talked about first what happens if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid. And we suggested that, well, you can take a supplement and that could get over the fact that you don't have enough hydrochloric acid to separate B12. So then some people with gastritis stop producing intrinsic factor. So what does intrinsic factor do?
Helps B12 absorb into the cell.
Yeah, it's required. Without intrinsic factor, to sort of quote Miss Brasfield, this becomes part of the poop. Okay, so it doesn't get absorbed in the cell. So no intrinsic factor, not absorbing B12. Okay, so atrophic gastritis can cause you to have, as you get older, poor B12 status. This slide goes through the exact same information I just went through. So I am not going to read it to you. This helps you with studying, and I don't want to be incredibly boring. So, but it's important for you to understand B12 absorption. And once you understand it, this is why we have, some biochemistry and some physiology in our nutrition classes, so you can make sense of information like this. So know how B12, what's required for its absorption, what can interfere with the absorption, and then what to do about it. So we'll keep talking about this. Okay, another bit of information. Anybody ever heard of what a proton pump inhibitor is?
Yes, briefly.
Know anybody taking one? Don't disclose it if it's you. I'm not asking for that. I'm just saying, anybody, because this is one of the most common drugs taken in the United States. Proton pump inhibitors. You can buy them over the counter. They don't call them proton pump inhibitors. They have their other names, but they're over the counter, and then you can also get prescriptions for them. Okay, let me explain what it is. This is a drug that interferes with acid production. So all this time we're talking about, well, acid's important. We need stomach acid. We need it to absorb B12. Is there any reason why you might not like to have a lot of stomach acid?
Acid
Why would
reflux.
you go?
Acid
It'll-
reflux.
Yeah. Let's say you have a small little ulcer in your stomach, or the lining is eroded. Stomach acid hurts. Okay, so this is something again I can speak personally to. I have bad genes and I can't metabolize aspirin. So aspirin it will erode the stomach, the lining of the stomach, and that is no fun. The aspirin erodes it, and then the acid feels like somebody's putting a cigarette out in your stomach. So people like me often take drugs that decrease acid production. So let's pretend like y'all want me to live a long time. And I have this problem and I need B12. What can I do about it? Can you think of anything? If I have to take this medication, I have to take it, and this interferes with acid production, what am I going to do?
Take a supplement again.
Yeah, you take the supplement and it can go around this problem. Thank you. Thanks for thinking with me, you guys. Sometimes it makes it a little more fun to learn when we do that. Okay, so atrophic gastritis, we've talked a lot about it, can lead to vitamin B12 deficiency. This is a little bit of a repeat, but if you have low hydrochloric acid and lack of intrinsic factor, right? We said there are lots of causes for this. Gastritis, just from aging or from bad genes. And so people get this, and if unchecked and they're not taking supplements, that can lead to vitamin B12 deficiency. There are many symptoms of B12 deficiency. It's a bad one. The actual name, and you need to write this down, the actual name of B12, full-blown B12 deficiency is called pernicious anemia. Pernicious, that's spelled P-E-R-N-I-C-I-O-U-S. Okay, again, full-blown B12 deficiency is called pernicious anemia, and it's spelled P-E-R-N-I-C-I-O-U-S. It shows up, instead of having an iron deficiency, you have little tiny red blood cells that are pale. But in B12 deficiency, something else is going on. We need B12 to multiply cells, and we can't do it because we don't have enough. So our red blood cells, instead of replenishing these normally, when our body's trying to make more red blood cells, the process gets messed up, and we just have big cells that don't work. Okay, the red blood cells don't work, and this is one of the symptoms of B12 deficiency. People used to be able to just diagnose this real easy by taking a blood sample, smearing it on a slide, and you take a look. Normal cells look like this. Large cells look like this. So it's an easy way to tell. Now there's all these other, biomedical reasons too. But anyways, so atrophic gastritis, which is common, remember, around my age group, about 25% of people have it, and it goes up, so it's common, and it can lead to B12 deficiency. So I posit to you that whenever you work with older adults, ask about B12, okay, and atrophic gastritis, because this is one of these things that can be caught sometimes by the nutrition professionals before the medical professionals. So what's it feel like? Now, see, a lot of people don't have healthcare. We talk in these classes like healthcare is an option. And we know that right now it's not an option for an awful lot of people. And Texas is the worst state. So here's how you feel. No healthcare. You feel weak, lightheaded, dizzy, They feel funny, have trouble hearing. And tinnitus is actually a ringing, the tinnitus, that's how you say it, is a ringing of the ear. So it's really common. And so that's the anemia making you feel tired because you don't have enough blood cells to transport oxygen. And then B12 itself. Remember how we needed B12 for the myelin sheath to keep the nerve cells functioning? If B12 status is low for a long time, we can start to feel the results of this, from limbs being numb and tingling. People have trouble walking, and they can also show mental changes. I have personal experience with someone. It's been 20 years now since I knew him. He's an amazing man. And he had this like bubbly personality. He was a Renaissance person. He knew so many things about, literature and politics. And he was just like a well-read person that was jovial. And his brother developed B12 deficiency, and then he found out that he had it too. So he started taking B12 shots, which is one solution, and he was fine. But you take them about once a month, and if he was late on getting his shot, you could see his nice jovial personality kind of change. He got crabby, and his wife would go, "Oh, wait, I know what's going on here. It's time for your B12 shot." Now, obviously, she put it on the calendar, but I'm just saying you can tell. People can actually see these symptoms. Now, if people go without getting tested, without medical care, and they have B12 deficiency, these changes, especially these limb problems and the unsteadiness with walking, they're not reversible. So if the myelin sheath degrades, you can't get it back. So if we think someone, because they're older, we have to suggest they could have B12 deficiency. So we have to consider that. And if we consider that, then we have to figure out, if that's going on and question that. So as long as people have healthcare, it's not only hard test.
Yeah. Question in the comments. Do these symptoms only apply to older adults or to anyone with B12 deficiency?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. Anybody. And there actually are some young people that get pernicious anemia. It's more rare, but the vegan diet can do it. It's a different mechanism. Probably we're not talking about gastritis. But so people can become B12 deficient, even younger. So it's such a good question. So whenever anybody has these, it's always hard to figure out whatever's going on with me. Is it really serious, or is it just fine? Is it going to get better? Okay, so things like these symptoms where numbness and tingling, that's a medical care issue, and they can figure it out. Thank you. That's such a good question. So
I also have a question. So if B12 is protects the myelin sheath or helps rebuild it, is it used in like multiple sclerosis therapy?
no, thank you for asking that, because it's a question that comes up. It's not the same mechanism. So the multiple sclerosis is not caused by the B12 deficiency, and it doesn't work as a supplement to turn it around. It's too bad, because that'd be great. Okay, so let's look at B12 deficiency. Here's your nerve cell, just to remember. What can cause deficiency? Well, we've talked a lot about this. Atrophic gastritis, right? Which has its own causes. Or taking proton pump inhibitors. Remember, those decrease acid in the stomach, which could interfere with B12 absorption, right? I take one of these every morning. I hate doing that. I want to be pure, which I'm not, but I would like to not ever take medications, and sometimes you need to. So this is one cause of B12 deficiency. And I'm going to talk about solutions in the next slide, so relax. One thing we haven't talked about is bariatric surgery. As you know, more and more people that become at risk for morbid obesity have part of the stomach removed as one of their treatments. I know you've learned about this in your physiology class, and you'll talk about it more in medical nutrition therapy if you take it. But if the stomach cells are removed, well, you're not going to be producing what you need to absorb B12. So that's another cause. And so all of these have a similar solution. So hang on. And then a strict vegan diet is a possibility. So if no food of animal origin crosses your lips over a period of time, and it takes a while because there's a little bit of contaminant B12 around, but it takes a while, but you can reduce your stores and have B12 deficiency. So vegan diet, I talk about this periodically. I think a vegetarian diet is a spectacular thing, but I think some animal products in there plus fish can make it into an almost perfect diet to the extent that that exists. So I don't think these are healthy on their own without supplements. So the consequences of B12 deficiency, look, I did spell it right. Okay, so pernicious anemia, macrocytic, or these are two terms are the same. This means your red blood cells are big. So either cytic means cell. So either macro is big or megalo is big. So you have anemia and the red blood cells are too big. They don't work right. And then, and this is the thing that we talked about before, if somebody has B12 deficiency, they may, if they get to the point where they have neurological symptoms like they're a little bit, cranky, they have that numbness, they have the tingling and so forth. Once this happens, once it gets this far, supplements aren't going to reverse it. They can stop the progression. So let's say, case study for your exam, somebody's 82 years old, they start to feel numbness and tingling. They personality change a little bit. They're acting a little weird. What do? Wait 6 months to see if it gets better or go get healthcare? Well, obviously that is affected by our healthcare system, but it's an emergency. You want to catch somebody as soon as you can so they don't have permanent consequences. Okay, so what do? I keep talking about this, and a lot of times people stop and go, well, what am I supposed to do about it? Well, here's the slide. What are you supposed to do about it? This is one of the few absolute recommendations for supplementation. For people over the age of 50 or 50 and older, take at least 2.4 micrograms per day. That's actually the requirement, the DRI for B12. But instead of just from food, the recommendation is from supplements. Why? I have to tell you something. I learned a long time ago to be able to maintain silence in class. So we've talked about it. So it doesn't hurt my feelings or make me uncomfortable. So I'm just going to sit here a minute and ask you, why does somebody over the age of 50, why do they recommend supplements as opposed to eating more B12 like hamburgers?
Cut digest if you don't have the stomach acid. If you're like older and your stomach acid concentration is a little bit lower.
And so if it's low, then you're going to absorb B12 from protein?
From a supplement. Easier.
Right. Thank you. That's the answer right there. That's why this is a universal recommendation by the government to people should take supplements. Now look at this. Look at the amount on here. It's kind of fuzzy, 1,000 micrograms, and the requirement is 2.5 micrograms per day. That's a lot. Here's the thing though, there's no UL, and not to get into too much detail, but if you take huge doses, a couple, 3 days a week or something, even if you have intrinsic factor problems and so forth, these high doses can probably solve the problem. The other fun part about B12 supplements, which I take too, is they're these little tiny, usually I get cherry flavored, so it's my candy for the day. And so, I don't know, my kids were little, they were Flintstone vitamins. So vitamin B12, they usually have a flavor, you put it under your tongue, and that's your dessert. But so anyway, high doses won't hurt, and they may help make up for a multitude of problems. So this is an official recommendation. I promise you'll get asked this. So food sources, we've already talked about this. Animal products, yeah, they work as long as your stomach's good. Fortified products are going to have B12 that's separate. So total cereal or some of these cereals, that B12 is the same thing as a supplement, and that's easier to absorb. So if you don't want to take a pill, but you'll eat some fortified cereal, then that works too. All right, so here's some more information about this. You know, older adults and vegans should take B12, and if people have a known condition where they have that autoimmune condition, like the friend I was talking about, his name is Bob, by the way, B12 shots can be a better solution sometimes. Any questions? All right, next topic. I hope you guys feel like you've had a good, thorough discussion of atrophic gastritis. I spent a lot of time on it because it really matters. And you may be the first line of defense to figure out someone that you're working with, that's what's wrong with them. You know, to tell you a poignant story, when my parents both died at 80, my father died first from Parkinson's disease, and he had dementia along with that. So it was rough. And so my mother's one of these people that would only stand by him and help him. It wasn't because, she did that because it's the right thing to do. So she wouldn't go anywhere while he was declining. He declined for several years, and we had caregivers coming in. I didn't live with him, but so we had people come in to take care of him. And then he died. And then within 4 months, my mother started acting funny. So what happened is it was Thanksgiving, ironically and poignantly. So it was Thanksgiving, I'm at her house. I was a lot younger then. It was their house. We're making food, and she said, "So, do we want sweet potatoes or regular potatoes for Thanksgiving?" We answered. I forget what it was, but probably sweet potatoes. And then, like 10 minutes later, she asked me the same question again. And then about 10 minutes later, she asked me the same question again. And my family does drink wine on holidays, but this wasn't a drinking experience. So I realized there was something wrong. So I went through all this stuff, and my first dream was, oh my goodness, I hope it's B12 deficiency, because her mother actually had it. And I was just hoping that's what it was, because her memory and her issues, we could fix them right then and there. But it turned out she had brain cancer, so it didn't work. So she was dead within 6 months. And so I tell this story. I used to cry every time I told it, but I tell people this story for a couple of reasons. One is always look for B12 first, because it could be an issue. And the other one is live your life to its fullest all the time. My mother she was waiting and waiting and waiting. She wouldn't do anything fun for herself. Wouldn't let us I wanted to take her Napa Valley. She wouldn't go. And then caregivers like my mother often get exhausted, and that's what kills them. And you hear it all the time. You hear about couples dying at the same time and so forth. But a neglected piece of this lecture is to remember that not only are we caring for the sick person, but also the older caregiver, and they need breaks too. Okay, so there's many lessons in this. The primary one is always think B12 first, because that's a great answer. And if it's not B12, then we got to move on from there. So, okay, so next topic is osteoporosis. This is something you've talked about during your entire education. So I know you know most of this stuff, but if we have osteoporosis and don't know about it, often it's silent. We don't even, people can even have vertebral fractures, and they don't feel them, but they can start to lose their, a lot of people lose their height as they get older because of just disc compression, but that's not osteoporosis necessarily. But then, this can happen, and not everybody gets that dowager's hump. You've probably seen that before, where here's the head and the back bows quite a bit. So that's more extreme. So why do people get this? Well, the older you are, the risk increases because your bone density goes down over time. A risk is also lower body weight. Now, we have an obsession with thinness in this country, which is, healthy body weight shouldn't be an obsession, but should be a goal. Extreme thinness is never good for people, but for some reason we think it matters. And it's what's so difficult about that is almost nobody can maintain that in today's society, right? So just keep in mind that a super low body weight does not help. One of the things that happens with people who have low body weight women is they also have reduced estrogen, and they end up not building their bones. Remember when we talked about the eating disorder athlete triad, right? So female athlete triad, right? So people not eating enough can decrease their body fat, decrease their production of estrogen, and then they don't build up bone density. So that happens to teenagers, young women. And then as they get older with that reduced bone density and that low body weight, they're less able to take on the ravages of aging. So they're more likely to have fragile bones that can break. So low body weight's a risk factor for life. Depending, healthy body weight's cool. Underweight is generally not cool. Low sun exposure. Why? Why does sun exposure matter here?
Vitamin D.
Thank you. Right. So we can get vitamin D from supplements, but it may not be enough. And there's an element of sun exposure that can help with that. Inactivity. Your bones will lose their strength if you don't use them. So that's why some classes or some activities where you run or you put stress on the joints, not to the point where it causes damage, but you use stress. You do things like that. Keep those bones strong. If people are inactive, and a great swath of population across the United States are inactive, and what happens is that bone density just decreases. So of course the muscle mass goes down too, but so does the bone density. And so people that are inactive for a few years, it's a recipe for failure, okay? So because their bones are weak and their muscles are weak, fall down, oftentimes that's a tragedy for people. So also it's a risk factor, and race ethnicity, I'm going to show you a table on this. Race ethnicity is a factor. Smoking never helps, and people, there's some drug regimens that can increase risk for osteoporosis too. And obesity can too, and you wouldn't think it would, except if obesity is accompanied by inactivity, then the bones still aren't getting those stresses. So the last one is to look at is nutrition. What about nutrition and osteoporosis risk? Okay, so poor diet. If you're under eating, and I used to show a slide that talked about women that do this, but you think about a widow living alone without family. What happens is people lose their interest in eating in the same way that they had before. If they're isolated and they're not involved in social engagements, oftentimes their diet can really get poor. And you have to eat a pretty good diet to get enough of these nutrients. I have seen people go through the line before, small women going through the grocery store line back when we all went to the grocery store, buying things like a can of chicken soup and hot dogs and things like that that are easy to microwave or cook in the refrigerator, cook in the microwave or cook it, throw in the oven or something like that. And they're not consuming the foods that really provide these nutrients. So calcium and vitamin D, the obvious source is milk, but also calcium comes from those, bok choy, broccoli and kale and almonds and things like that, fortified orange juice and so on. So, but a poor diet over a period of time can really increase risk. And then, so that's don't eat enough. And then the other issue is don't absorb enough. We've talked about absorption, right here. So gastritis, and I know one of you, I think it was you, Colby, one of you brought it up and said, so can gastritis affect absorption of other nutrients? Absolutely it can. So with gastritis, absorption of calcium and iron can decrease. So And this is going to happen with this atrophic gastritis. So that can happen. And then lots of things about vitamin D. As people get older, they have less sun exposure often. Now, I'm not one of those people because I spend all my time outdoors. But if I lived in Boston, that wouldn't work because there's not enough sun exposure there in the winter, even in the summer. But when my dad, those years where he was declining in a wheelchair with Parkinson's, often caregivers don't push him outside into the sun. You know, at facilities, a lot of times people do that, but you have to be mindful of it. They need to have their sun exposure during the day. People should get outside anyway because it's good for the psyche, but this being outside can really help. And also, and this is part of this, things decline when you get older, but the skin gets less good at making vitamin D. And then we need the kidneys to help with this process, and they get tired too. So there's a lot of reasons why people decrease their status, their nutrition status of critical nutrients for bones.
There was a comment in the chat that said, I remember one of my public health professors said that you can get all your vitamins from fast food, and it didn't sit well with me.
Oh, come on. Say it again really loud so I can get upset.
I remember one of my public health professors said that you can get all your vitamins from fast food, and it just didn't sit well with me.
Wow. You know what? Here's my comment to that kind of nonsense is tell people to stay in their lane. Okay, because a nutrition education is quite different than public health. They both care about health, but nutrition, if you think about all the things we've had to talk about today, right? And you may have gone, well, this is a lot, but you've been building up to this, right? We've been building up to what do nutrients do? What does the chemistry look like? What does digestion happen? How does this happen? How does the kidney function? Why does this matter? So I can talk about this stuff with you because you've had this rich education that brings you to the point where you can understand this. And so when somebody from some other related field, oh God, thinks that, okay, they make some blanket statement like this, they're not in their lane, and honestly, that kind of comment is specious. This is such a interesting and rich field of study, and someone that makes a comment like that is a complete idiot. You can quote me on that.
Yeah, I agree.
All what did they say? All the nutrients?
Yeah, pretty much. I
Things-
couldn't even keep my mouth shut the whole time. I was just like, that's not true. Like, I can't even believe I'm like, you're my teacher right now. The fact that I couldn't believe she had a PhD and she could say that.
Right. It doesn't even matter. Here's the thing. It doesn't even matter what field if you're in a scientific field and you have a PhD, then you should have enough savvy to understand what you do know and what you don't know. Honestly, a really good scientist will stop and go, I don't know this, or this is a limit of my understanding, or here's what my lane, and I'm going to bleed into this lane, but let me tell you that I may not know enough. But I will also tell you that I'm sure you're going to get this one. Oh, you're not going home for Thanksgiving. Good. But everybody thinks they're an expert on nutrition because they eat. Happens all the time. You guys probably get challenged by family members all the time. Oh, well, I think this is fine. And I quit talking to them, people there that don't listen because they don't understand. But the science of nutrition is a complex science. It requires a broad understanding of a variety of scientific and sociological related disciplines. And for somebody that understands public health to make a blanket statement about nutrition is absurd. Let's say let's carry this for a moment. So there's a product called a Carnation Instant Breakfast. It's something that was around when my kids were little. So it's like you take milk and you add this like chocolate flavored powder that has vitamins and minerals in it. That's a processed food. Let's say it had the full component, the DRI for all the vitamins and minerals, and that's all you ate. How would that work? What else could affect your nutrition status if ever all your vitamins and minerals are, they said vitamins and minerals are crumbled into your thing. Is there anything missing?
Calorie.
Pardon me?
Calorie level.
Calories are one, absolutely. Anything else bother you?
Someone else in the comments said it wouldn't work. Some vitamins can't coexist.
Oh, so they may interfere with absorption of each other. That's true. Actually, vitamin C and B12 at the same time, absorption is interfered with. Okay. This is really fun. Okay, so let's imagine you did this for 6 months. I'm just going to give one example. Let's say you're prone to constipation. You get all your vitamins and minerals. How's your health? You know the answer. Okay, let's do another one. Let's say that the microbiome affects your health, okay, in complex ways. Can you just drink this mixture of vitamins and minerals and be fine?
No.
Thank you. Okay, what else? What else is in a whole foods diet compared to processed foods that might help you?
Omega-3.
Yeah, well, let's say they put it in there. What else?
Fiber.
Fiber is kind of a large one. What about, we used to have a class in our program, and the faculty member left, but it was called functional foods. And the class was about all the phytonutrients, because we talk about, basic, vitamin C, folic acid. You go through that whole list of nutrients in our education, but there's all these other components found in real food that affect your entire health. Okay, including, let's say, what's in broccoli. There's chemicals like sulforaphane and other things that affect colon health. Okay, eating whole beans, for example, that affects motility of the gastrointestinal tract, causes toning of the gastrointestinal tract. Soluble fiber can interfere with cholesterol levels. Improve cholesterol levels. The types of fat that you consume, like you brought up DHA, are ridiculously different from a processed food diet versus a whole foods diet. If it's processed food, where's your omega-3s? I'm sorry, I know I'm going off tangent, but here's what I would hope you would do. I feel like you're getting there, you guys. Don't let people take your voice away from you. And if you're in a class and somebody says something like that, be very respectful, because I think it's important to do that. We don't get what we want from vitriol. We get it from reason and kindness. But and I probably wouldn't blurt out, stay in your lane, although I might now because I'm getting old. But you could say something like, the science of nutrition is a lot more complicated than just getting your vitamins and minerals. I guess that would be the summative statement there.
Yeah, I kind of just told her I didn't agree. It's too, yeah.
You're going to come across it your whole life. People are going to say that they know a lot about nutrition because they cook.
I'm sorry I got you off topic.
No, this actually isn't off topic, Blake. Actually, in my opinion, this is spot on topic. And what's missing for me, and I feel like y'all are really helping with this, is in the classroom environment, I stop and talk about things like this. I don't just sit there, rote, and go through, here's my slide. I like to stop and think together a little bit, which I was trying to do with the B12 stuff, and because when you learn to think with information, then you actually begin to develop an expertise. And honestly, I think the result of a really good education is, you have an idea about the breadth of knowledge in a field, and you know how much you know, which is usually just a small piece of it. And with that comes humility and the understanding to learn more. But when people make blanket comments like that person did, what you need to know is they don't understand science that well, and you're going to do better than that. Okay, because it's complicated. If this wasn't complicated, we wouldn't need the field, right? We wouldn't need people to develop expertise in this and be able to make a difference. But it's complicated, and you're completely up for this. So thank you. I'll come down. You didn't take me off topic though. I appreciate it. So thank you. Okay.
One more comment in the comments. I think what it becomes is someone believing that a child can get more from formula than from breast milk, but it's not true. Just like we aren't dogs that can have one superfood.
Okay, that's like my favorite statement. That's exactly it, right? Otherwise, this goes back to a movie a long time ago with Soylent Green, but it comes back to, why don't we just eat formula, right? We could just eat dog balls and not dog, like I call them dog food, dog balls, sorry. We could just eat a product like that. It's exactly it. Infant formula, that's exactly it. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, thank you. So who's at risk for osteoporosis? Here comes this age 50 again. Here's what's going to happen when women hit menopause. They've been building bone density up to about age 30, and then it kind of flattens out. A lot of women around age 50 undergo menopause. They're not really fertile for 10 years before that, but roughly. So they hit menopause, and then their estrogen levels go down and their bone density automatically goes down. Everybody's does. There's a predictable fall. So what happens is the more dense you got it and the more active you stay, the higher and the stronger your bones are. But if you dieted, stayed underweight, didn't eat enough stuff, even flirted with an eating disorder, then your bone density starts down here. And then when you hit menopause, if you're not active, then it can get really low. So all of this, this is like a life stage condition that being active all of your life can help, and eating real food, not formula, can help. But still, we have genetics. So Caucasian and Asian women are in particular at high risk. Low bone mass is something they'll flirt around with. I don't worry about this as much as the osteoporosis. Okay, so what are we supposed to do about it? I give you this table, and sometimes I think, is the table going to be as helpful as me giving just a couple numbers? But let's just take a look at this. The National Osteoporosis Foundation says males need this much calcium and vitamin D over the age of 51, and females need more calcium and the same amount of vitamin D. And when people get over 70, the vitamin D amount goes up. Now, you guys talk about a rich subject: vitamin D metabolism, the vitamin D function in the body, vitamin D potential for decreasing risk for diseases. Is the vitamin D is actually, I think, the sexiest vitamin right now in terms of the area of research and how fun it is to talk about. That doesn't mean just because it's cool, it doesn't mean you need more. And I have become a believer in these careful recommendations from the moment I've been studying nutrition for probably 40 years and studying it pretty hard. When I first was young, like you guys, and honestly didn't know very much when we took those nutrition classes, I thought, why are they so careful about how much supplements you need? Why don't we just try more? And then over the years, I realized that some of the studies that were based on how a nutrient functions, high doses made things worse. So you can take more. I'm about following these guidelines. Okay. So here's what we want to do is this lifelong stuff, okay? Have your DRI, eat real foods. Notice this is not just a formula. Sorry, I'm going to be cranky for the rest of the day, or happy maybe. But anyway, eat real food, okay? If intake is low, take a calcium supplement. I say no more than 500 milligrams at a time, because after that, you don't absorb anymore. So it's kind of useless. So if your intake's really low, take one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Sometimes supplements are a good idea. However, I'm going to tell one more personal story. I'm going to miss you guys, so I'm going to tell one more personal story. So a year and a half ago, August, I was at the coast with, we go to Port Aransas, my family would go and catch fish and, cook great food, fish tacos, and have a complete blast, and occasionally drink beer. But so we were having just a great time. And my son is one of these people who's, I love madly, who is strong. And so my husband's skinny, compared to me. It's just he's one of these people that is wiry and strong, but not heavy. So my son came over in his exuberance and picked us up together, both of us, picked us both up and lifted us up. You know what happened to me? He broke the 9th rib on my right side. I had felt it snap. Okay, I was just so mad. I mean, I love him dearly. So, but I didn't have an x-ray machine there. So anyway, so the next day they go fishing and I'm like waiting. I went to some coffee house because we had checked out and I'm saying I kept getting more and more pain. I'm like, this is not good. So I come back and get it figured out. Yes, he broke my rib, yada, yada, yada. And so then my well-meaning colleagues, many of whom you take classes from, said, why don't you check your bone density? Why don't you check maybe you should take calcium supplements after all. So I went and got it checked. My bone density was fine. But you know what? If somebody smashes your rib in really hard, you can have good bone density and it's still going to snap. It's fine now. It was just 4 months of agony. But point is, I did not need, it was not from a lack of calcium supplements. So I bought some and then quit taking them. But anyway, here's what really happens with older people that I don't want to be in that group, but fall down or walk by a counter in the kitchen, touch it with their hip, and then have a break. They fall down. You know what's going on there? Their hips can be so fragile that it's ready for any kind of abrupt force like that. And then so sometimes they fall almost before they hit their hip because the bone density goes down so much. And we talk about falls with older adults a lot because oftentimes that fall can be the beginning of the end for their lives. This is because they fall back in the old days when you could go to the hospital after that, right? So that when COVID wasn't going on. So they go in, they have a broken hip, broken leg, whatever. Sometimes the hips are really hard to fix. And then they go in, and in the hospital, they can also get like secondary pneumonia because they're on their back. So that's why they get people up all the time instead of letting you lie there for a week, get you up and get you moving so you can breathe and do all this kind of stuff. But sometimes that fall is precipitates the beginning of the end of their life. So what do we want to do? We want to do prevention. And prevention is diet and exercise, and diet matters. You need enough protein. This isn't a whole lot, but this is enough. But you need to move and do weight-bearing exercises. So have this as a guideline coming up, but it's a big deal. Okay. So
a comment about your story.
Yeah.
Said that's wild. Another person said, I ran into someone at the skate park and it broke my rib. And then that same person picked me up and broke it again before it healed.
Oh God. You have my sympathy. Okay, so further on that story, so our family doctor's been someone that's taken care of me. I've been to him going for like 20, 30 years. I love him madly. So my kids have always gone to him too, so he knows my whole family. So I go into and it's just a single guy with his business. I go in and I'm pretty sure Mason broke my rib. And you know what the people said? They said, oh, I bet he really feels bad. And I said, I don't care how bad he feels right now. I'm the one with the broken rib, but they were very sympathetic for him. They're like, well, I hope he's okay. Anyway, way of the world. Yeah, so no, anyway, it's weird. Yeah. Okay. Exercise, use your bones, get out every day, move. Everybody needs to do it. 90-year-old people, go for a good half-hour walk, whatever you can do. Okay, so I have a little more time to continue this lecture. And this is also an important issue, which I've experienced with because my mom had it. So a common thing that happens to older adults, it's really related to diet and lifestyle, is degeneration of the eye, age-related macular degeneration. Here's your eyeball. The macula is the back part of it. And what happens is this can decrease and degenerate with age. Okay, and so it's a leading cause of vision loss. Another one is diabetes, which we haven't talked about. This is a big deal for older adults. Risk, smoking, Caucasian, family history. And here's the lifestyle pieces, and this is why it matters. we all know smoking's bad, exercise is good, keep your blood pressure up. And then diet plays a big role here. Fruits, vegetables, fish, green leafy vegetables, because they include these compounds. So I just mentioned this earlier about, let's get back to your horrible public health professor. Okay, they go, you can't get all the vitamins and minerals you need. Well, you know what? Lutein and zeaxanthin are carotenoids that are found in green and orange vegetables and fruits. They're not listed as vitamins, right? They're not, because a vitamin, remember, is an essential nutrient that you must consume in order to be okay. These are just beneficial ones in food and omega-3 fats. Okay, so these nutrients, I'm talking about there's a supplement that combines all these things that actually helps people if they get this condition from it progressing. So they can start to go, oh, my vision's going, oh my goodness, this is serious. And then if they can get tested and they have healthcare and somebody pays attention, they can go, oh, start taking a supplement, and they can stop it in its tracks. Because here's what happens if you don't. So what I'm going to say though is this diet, eating the whole foods diet can help protect you from getting this in the first place. Here's what it looks like. This is the test they do. You have this little square on your refrigerator and you look at it. And if it looks like this, you're okay. You look at the middle dot. If it looks like squares, it's okay. But somebody with macular degeneration looks at that same thing, and that's what it looks like to them. The lines bend, so their vision is losing its acuity. This is probably the saddest thing for me, is thinking about looking at your loved ones and not seeing their face anymore, because the center of your vision, the decline of the macula really goes. Okay, so what do you do about this? Eat a whole foods diet, because that's going to provide all those phytochemicals that are in, fruits and vegetables that flesh out what makes a healthy diet. Okay, so I think it's appropriate for me to stop here. I'm actually going to do that. And I'm going to, let me stop this. Okay, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop.